Raise your hand if you've ever seen the price of something and you felt like it was a deal that you couldn't pass up. Companies do it to us all the time, but the same thing can happen in fantasy football. We see the price of a player given their current ADP, and based on the statistics that we know off the top of our head, it feels like it is a smash draft pick. Make sure you get this guy at this price and everything's going to be golden. But that doesn't always happen. Like, for instance, that $5 gas station sushi that says sell by tomorrow may not be the best idea for you. Jake was sitting at home watching QVC and some Korean hair restoration was 2 for $20. We see where that got him. Well, I've got 3 running backs for you today that the price may seem too good to pass up on. But when we dig a little bit deeper, maybe it's that hair restoration, maybe it's that sushi. It definitely could end up being a trap though. Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? I've got 3 running backs today that we're going to be taking a look at to figure out whether or not they're going to be a trap. Now, I'm not saying don't draft these guys because they could end up being great draft picks. But realistically, their current ADP, is it good enough to invest at that price? Or should we be hoping they get a little bit cheaper on draft day? Make sure you hit that like button for me because in my last video, I challenged all of you to a like goal. And if we hit 1,000 likes on a video, I was gonna give away a free draft guide. And our winner from the last video, Tim Powers, 84. Thanks for hitting the like button. Thanks for subscribing, and thank you for watching the videos and commenting to let us know that you have been around all off season long, watching the content, and also sharing with us that dropping Chase Brown last year was a big mistake on your part that you shouldn't have done. But we're gonna help turn your luck around. You're getting a free draft guide now, and if you want to get a free draft guide after this video, let's bump that like goal up a little bit. 1,200 likes if you want a shot to get a draft guide. And I'll tell you more about that draft guide here in a couple of minutes. But the number 1 running back that I want to talk about today is going to be Jonathan Taylor. Should we be investing in him at his current price? With an ADP of running back 8 and being taken 19th overall, let's look at it. Take a look at the numbers in 2024 for Jonathan Taylor. They're really not all that bad. 303 rushing attempts, 1,431 rushing yards, 11 rushing touchdowns, and was the RB9 on the season. As a whole, last year for Jonathan Taylor seemed to go extremely well. But when you dive into Jonathan Taylor and you take a little bit of a deeper look at the numbers from last year, something is going to show up right away. Specifically, the last 5 games of the season. Because over the last 5 games, Jonathan Taylor had 142 rushing attempts, 723 rushing yards, and 6 rushing touchdowns. That may seem like a lot. In fact, it is a lot because over the last 5 games of the season, Jonathan Taylor had over 50% of his 2024 fantasy production. That's right. Over 50% of his production last year came in 5 of the 14 games that he played. One thing that you might be saying right away is, well, Kyle, some of that came with Joe Flacco, and it did, so that changes the dynamic of the offense a little bit, but 3 of the games were with Anthony Richardson. Only 2 of the games were with Joe Flacco. And the injury bug continues to be a concern when it comes to Jonathan Taylor. Over his first 2 seasons in the NFL, he only missed 1 game, but over the last 3 seasons, he's missed 16 games. Now, 2024, he was the healthiest that he has been. But a running back that you're taking in the 2nd round right now that realistically will probably end up being your RB1 if you start with a wide receiver, or your RB2 if you start with a running back, do you feel comfortable knowing that he can miss anywhere from 4 to 7 games based on the projections that he's currently had over the last 3 years? Now, he will end up being a little cheaper this season than he was last year, which is good. But I think we also need to talk about the fact that we don't even know who the starting quarterback is going to be at this point. Will it be Anthony Richardson? Will it be Daniel Jones? Will there be a mixture of both? Who's going to be the best for Jonathan Taylor to have another fantasy solid season? And will a lot of that fantasy value be based on whether or not he's getting a ton of volume? When you take a look at a couple of different numbers, we can determine that a lot of his fantasy value right now is volume dependent, which isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as you're hoping for over 300 carries once again. Last season, with avoided tackles, he was tied for 27th among running backs. A guy like James Cook that had 100 less rushing attempts than Jonathan Taylor last season finished with more avoided tackles than he did. Some other guys were Tyler Algier, Jordan Mason, J.K. Dobbins, even Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard. A lot of these guys were way more fluid running the ball than what Jonathan Taylor was. In fact, with yards after contact per attempt, he also struggled. He was a guy last season that among the top 12 fantasy running backs finished by far the lowest in yards after contact per attempt. So for Jonathan Taylor, we don't know who the quarterback is as of yet, and we need to bank on a ton of volume in that offense for him to be a high-ranking fantasy finisher. Are you buying it or are you selling it? Is Jonathan Taylor at his current ADP of running back 8 a trap? This is now the second time in a week I'll be talking about Chase Brown. I brought him up in a video last week, but after doing the video, then reading some of the reactions in the comments, I felt like we needed to discuss him a little bit more. One thing I want you to keep in mind that we're OG Chase Brown truthers here. Last year, he was a big breakout candidate for us. We had him listed in the draft guide, multiple videos. We were all in on Chase Brown. So anything I have to say right now is not Chase Brown hate. So if it comes across like that, Headliner Nation, this is only from a place of wanting to dissect his ADP a little bit more. I brought up his ADP in the last video that I did, and when I mentioned him in that video, I talked about how he was currently going in the 3rd round. The hope was, and I said best case scenario, is that he would fall to the 4th round. Now, I saw a ton of comments come through. He's not going in the 3rd round. He's going in the 1st round, or he's going early 2nd round. Over on Underdog, right now in best ball leagues, he is going at the beginning of the 3rd round. Now, come redraft season, that could fluctuate a little bit. Now, me saying that he could go in the 4th round was not me. That was basically me wishing that into existence. It's probably not going to happen. That would be best case scenario, like perfect. Not going to happen. So Chase Brown right now, I think we need to plan on being an early 3rd round pick or a late 2nd round pick. That's a whole lot better than being drafted after the 10th round. That's where he was taken last year, was after the 10th round. This year, you're going to have to use one of your first 3 picks on Chase Brown. So is he going to be worth it in 2025? In the last video I talked about Chase Brown, really it boiled down to what do you think his usage would be when the team was winning, tied, and losing? And these are the statistics that I went through, which is his usage last season when they were winning, tied, and losing. And it really comes back to, what do you think the Bengals are going to be this season? Are they going to be a team that will be losing a lot, therefore throwing a lot? Because if they are, Chase Brown is going to lose a decent amount of value. Now, they weren't great last season, but T. Higgins was banged up from time to time, and they really didn't have a whole lot of depth at the running back position. We'll talk about that more in just a minute. But when you take a look at Chase Brown, you have to realize that Cincinnati's defense may not be that good this year. And if it's not, they're going to be throwing the ball an awful lot more. Trey Hendrickson, still technically with Cincinnati, has not been traded yet, although that was the talk basically all offseason long, how Hendrickson was going to be traded. Sam Hubbard, he retired, and not anyone was really expecting that to happen. And their 1st round pick, Shamar Stewart, still hasn't even signed his rookie contract and is currently holding out because he doesn't like the language in it. When is he going to be ready to go? So as of right now, the defense it doesn't look great. And if it doesn't look great and they're passing it a whole lot, is Chase Brown going to be able to establish a decent floor knowing that he could be up and down? You have to look at the guys going around him and wonder, is Chase Brown really worth it as the RB 11, 12, 13? Now, they still have Zach Moss on the roster, and I know Zach Moss did basically nothing last season. He did start 6 of the first 8 games in 2024 before he lost the rest of the season due to injury. Now, Chase Brown had already basically become the main back at that point, so even though Zach Moss was starting, Chase Brown was still the guy that we were seeing out there a little bit more often. But one guy they brought back, Samaje Perine, who hasn't been with Cincinnati, and is now returning to fill a potential pass-catching role. If they don't view Chase Brown as a pass-catching back, and they view Samaje Perine as that back, then you're going to see Samaje Perine potentially on the field more often in those passing situations, which again, if you don't believe in the defense of Cincinnati, then maybe Chase Brown is going to be losing out on quite a bit of snaps. Now, hold on, one more thing. Kyle, Chase Brown is way better than Samaje Perine. He's way better than Zach Moss. Like, I get it. I agree. I think he is. But remember when Joe Mixon was way better than Samaje Perine, and Samaje Perine was still getting a ton of looks? Remember when Joe Mixon was way better than Gio Bernard, and Gio Bernard was still getting a ton of looks? Zach Taylor has a history of doing this to his starting running backs, where we find it infuriating to try and figure out what will their usage be in any given week. If Samaje Perine was brought back to be a pass-catching back, and Cincinnati's going to be losing quite a bit, we got to wonder if Chase Brown at his current ADP is a trap. If you could guarantee me, again, 4th round ADP, I might be on board with it. Absolutely. We might not be having this discussion. But because we are spending an early 3rd round pick, potentially a late 2nd round pick, is there anybody being drafted after him that we feel might be a little bit safer? That may not come off the field as much as Chase Brown could end up doing, who plays with a better team and a better defense to start getting the ball a little bit more often? Heck, let me know this, Headliner Nation. Do you think that Chase Brown will have a better season than David Montgomery? Let me know down in the comments below. Chase Brown or David Montgomery, who would you take at their current ADP? Now, the reason I'm going to ask that question is because at the beginning of the video, I told you all if we get to 1,200 likes, I will give away a draft guide in this video. So we need 1,200 likes, and then someone who leaves a comment down below telling me, would you rather have Chase Brown at his ADP or David Montgomery at his ADP? I'm going to pick one of you that also subscribed to the channel to win a free draft guide if we get to 1,200 likes. But if you just want to get your draft guide right now, head on over to tfhdraftguide.com. There's a link in the description below. This draft guide is, once again, going to be chock full of a ton of information, and some of it you're not going to find anywhere else, like my dynamic running back rating, which will talk about Chase Brown and which was pivotal in pointing out the Chase Brown breakout back in 2024. So make sure you get your draft guide now, $24.99 over on the website, instant access, and it will be updated all off season long. The last running back that we're going to talk about in this video, stop. Somebody out there is going to yell and be like, Kyle, you hate James Cook. No, I don't hate James Cook. Just listen for a second, okay? James Cook was really good last year, and I've been, for the most part, very supportive of James Cook. Now, I do think James Cook truthers can get a little bit out of control and maybe amp him up to be a little bit more than what he is. But last year, there is a fundamental problem when you take a look at the season he had if you don't really dive into the numbers. 38% of James Cook's fantasy points last season came from touchdowns. His overall volume last year was not that great. He was fueled by scoring touchdowns, which, to his benefit, he's in a really good offense for that. So he could score 16 touchdowns again this year. But what is one of the main things that you're really not supposed to do in fantasy football? It's chase touchdowns, because touchdowns are one of the hardest stats to replicate year after year. Keep in mind, his first 2 years in the league, James Cook only scored 4 total rushing touchdowns, 2 in each of the first 2 years. So he hasn't been a guy that's been known for scoring touchdowns until last year. And he is playing for a contract extension. He has that going for him. But take a look at the other running backs who scored 16 rushing touchdowns last season. The first one being Jahmyr Gibbs. He scored 16 rushing touchdowns last season, but those rushing touchdowns only equated to 28% of his fantasy points. What about Derrick Henry? He scored 16 rushing touchdowns last season. Those rushing touchdowns only equated to 29% of his fantasy points for the season. But it wasn't just those 2 guys. It's all of the top running backs. I'll read them off for you here. Saquon Barkley. His rushing touchdowns, 23% of his yearly value. Bijan Robinson was at 26%. Josh Jacobs, 32%. Kyren Williams, also 32%. In fact, there was only one running back besides James Cook to have double-digit touchdowns but lower rushing yards, and it was David Montgomery. And he missed 3 games. Montgomery had 12 rushing touchdowns and 775 rushing yards. But again, he missed 3 games. So maybe even if he doesn't miss 3 games, he doesn't quite reach the 1,000-yard plateau the same way that James Cook did. But he probably would have been pretty close if he had not gone over. But David Montgomery is going far later than James Cook. If you're drafting David Montgomery, whose ADP is actually better this year so far than it was last year, you're getting a better deal for what could end up being pretty similar production, especially if you're banking on touchdown. What if James Cook has similar volume this year, but less rushing touchdowns? What if he only has 14? What if he only has 12? What if he only has 10? Keep in mind, Ray Davis, who played at times last season, looked pretty darn good. Maybe they try to give James Cook a little bit more of a break. That's a little bit volatile for me. And I will say that actually based on the consensus rankings, I'm a little bit higher on James Cook right now than what the expert consensus ranking is. So I'm actually a little bit more in his corner than what it sounds like in this video. But once again, all of these running backs that I talked about today, I want to talk about whether or not they're a potential trap. This video is not to deter you from drafting them. This is not a must-avoid video. This is a, hey, these running backs need to be talked about a little bit more, and we need to decide if their ADP is good enough. Headliner Nation, that's going to do it for me today. Hopefully you enjoyed the content. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button. 1,200 likes, and we'll pick somebody to win a draft guide. Get your draft guide right now at tfhdraftguide.com. And for Headliner Nation, I'm going to get out of here. Peace out, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.